presentation is what the hell is ICS security. Brandon spent 5 years teaching middle school and high school, and then transitioned into the security side after obtaining his bachelor's in cybersecurity and networking. His first job after that was at a nonprofit focused on cybersecurity for the electric sector, where he began to learn his journey about ICS and everything security that it entails. Please join in with me in welcoming Brandon Workentin.
Thank you. So I'll get a little bit more into my background kind of in the middle of the presentation. What we're going to talk about is a kind of a baseline, what are industrial control systems, why you might be interested in them, hopefully you are interested in them if you're in here, and then go into how I got involved in ICS security, because it definitely is not something that I thought I would be doing even 5 years ago. Some security basics, and then how you can grow is kind of the meat of the talk in that last part, where you can learn more, how you can get involved. So first we have, what are industrial control systems? Homer probably doesn't know what they are, even though he should. This is Wikipedia's definition. Control system used in an industrial process. I used to be an English teacher. This is a terrible definition because you should not use the words to describe what the definition is, what you're defining. But we can talk a little bit about it. What are industrial processes? Basically, they control a physical process, something physical. Electrical is power going along the line, water flowing through a pipe, your car, the computers that run your car now, chemical reactions if you're working in a chemical plant, that kind of thing. Manufacturing. We use a lot of acronyms in ICS security. We're going to talk about a few of them. The first one is SCADA, and SCADA's really common. A lot of times you'll even see ICS/SCADA written, so they're kind of combined at the same time. It means supervisory control and data acquisition. This picture is from a picture book by a guy named Robert Lee, who we'll talk about a little bit later because he's involved in training too. He wrote this book, he said, for children and managers, and it's called SCADA and Me. It's spun off into a webcomic now. If you Google Little Bobby, the webcomic. He puts them out every Sunday, I think. But the book is describing what SCADA is to children and managers. I've read it to my kids. It's written at a level that a 4-year-old can kind of understand, kind of. So the main thing on SCADA is it uses high-level computers for the supervisory process. The supervisory is high-level computers and peripheral devices for the data acquisition and control. So those peripheral devices are oftentimes distributed as in not on that computer. If they're distributed over miles, we might call it a distributed control system, or a DCS. That's another acronym you see a lot. The most common term we see for those peripheral devices is probably PLC, or programmable logic controller. These are small computers, ruggedized, and they usually use ladder logic. So ruggedized means they have to work in places like a cement factory where there's dust everywhere, or a substation in Minnesota where it gets down to negative 10 degrees or something like that. They have to be able to withstand extremes in temperature and operating environment. And then ladder logic, I should say, is a simple, almost a programming language, but really based off of Boolean logic. And this is an example of what a simple ladder logic might do. We have our water tank up here with a PLC, and the PLC just measures what the water level is, and it's asking itself, is the water level too low? And it queries however often it needs to, maybe once a minute, maybe once a second, depending on what your requirements are. Queries, what's the level? And it checks, am I too low, am I too low, am I too low? And if it says, oh, I'm at that point where I'm too low, I need to open this valve on the top and start letting more water in. And so that it starts fill, and it does some more queries, and might have another logic that says, am I too high? And if I hit that top line, then I open up again or I close that valve and stop letting water in. A really simple Boolean logic like that is how pattern logic works. And when we get into my presenter display isn't working, so I don't have my clock up there. When we get into what protocols we're talking about, and this is a very quick intro to ICS. This is from a website called Shodan that we'll talk about a little bit later too. Some of the common ones, DMP3 is used very commonly in the electric industry. Siemens S7 is, if you're familiar with Stuxnet, that's what the Siemens S7, Stuxnet took advantage of the Siemens S7 protocol, or used the Siemens S7 protocol. Modbus is a very common across industries, and we'll talk a little bit more about the security of Modbus when we get into securing ICS in a little while. And then there's tons more. This is just a small snippet of a screenshot from the Shodan site. So, why you might be interested in ICS security? First, it's critical infrastructure. How many of you are familiar with the critical infrastructure term? Okay, about half of us. There are 16 defined critical infrastructures in the U.S., 17 if you count elections. It's a debate right now whether that one should be. But they're the things that our economy needs for national security. Electricity, water, safe water, transportation, retail, financial services. And pretty much every critical infrastructure at some point relies on ICS systems to get their job done. In some industries, like the electric industry that I work with, what they mainly care about is ICS. Other ones, like financial services, they may have more of an IT-centric view, but if you look at their supply chain, there's still ICS. I mean, printing money requires industrial control systems. So every critical infrastructure relies on ICS systems at some point. Another reason why is because it's getting into the news. This article was from just about a year ago, a little over a year ago, in 2015. Ukraine had the first confirmed cyber attack that caused a power outage in the world. There's a rule in the electric industry that if you're going to give a talk about security, you have to talk about Ukraine now. Ukraine has publicly accused Russia of causing the attack. The U.S. has not said yet. I've heard from some people who were involved in investigating this that some people think that we should attribute it. Some people think that we should not. Think that we can't attribute it because the investigation was too late. But Ukraine has officially attributed it to Russia. The U.S. has not officially attributed it to anybody. But it happened in the middle of a war, so logic tells you that who was probably involved. It involved spear phishing on distribution, 6 different distribution substations where they got 6 different utility companies and cut power at different substations, affecting 250,000 people. There's actually a cell phone video of the operator of one of these utilities. When his mouse started moving on his computer, opening breakers, he took out a cell phone and took a video of the mouse moving and cutting power to people. That video, the fact it exists is not classified, but that video is not released publicly yet. Hopefully at some time it will, because it's a great awareness thing for cybersecurity awareness. Another reason why, there's a plural on this, because Ukraine, almost to the day, 1 year after the first attack, they had one on a transmission utility, which, if you're familiar with the electric grid, distribution is like the local neighborhoods, transmission is like state, regional, and the big ones. And so the one on the transmission utility more recently is a more worrisome attack in a lot of ways, because it can have a bigger impact from less work almost. Also because if you talk to the NERC SIP people who do electric industry compliance requirements, they say that NERC SIP protects us from Ukraine attacks, even though it doesn't apply to distribution companies. So that gets me into my compliance soapbox, and we don't want to go there. Another reason why is ICS security is a pretty small world. Dale Peterson owns a company called Digital Bond, and he puts on a conference we'll talk about a little bit later. Andy Bachman works for the federal government. I was thinking about it this morning. I'm not sure if it's DOE or ICS cert. I can't remember which, but he works for the federal government. And Dale's guesstimate was about 5,000 total, and only 1,000 that we actually are out going to conferences and talking and stuff in ICS. I'll put around Kaspersky hiring 7 people from their ICS cert that they stood up in Europe, and Dale saying that that's a huge number in the ICS world. There's not a lot of people, so you can make your mark quickly. Now we're going to transition as a start into how you can get more involved in ICS security if it's something you're interested in. We'll start with my story of how I got involved. I used to be a teacher. This is my favorite picture from my teaching career. That is me licking a slug in Oregon. I lost a kind of a bet with my class that they scored high. It was a test quiz type thing, and they did well enough that I lost the bet and had to lick a slug. So I taught math and English. I started a Master's of Educational Technology program. Did that for a couple terms because I had at this charter school I was at. I was I became the IT department kind of because we had one computer cart for the 4 classes in middle school, and it was in my classroom. So like when the kids broke off the keys, I started replacing those. I would do what I could to defrag the drives and stuff and try to make them work with those old computers. And I realized I could go to the local community college and spend $80 a credit to get an IT degree instead of $700 or whatever it was for the master's degree. And I wanted to go work at a school still, work with kids, do that. So I started the associate's program, which Thaddeus said bachelor's of cybersecurity, but that's wrong. It's actually an associate's. I don't know if I wrote it wrong. I have a bachelor's, just not in cybersecurity. The school I went to started a cybersecurity program the year I went to it. I actually joined them midway through the first cohort, and I was able to graduate in the first graduating class because I had all my general ed requirements. Like every cybersecurity program, probably, if you have a cybersecurity or an IT security degree or anything like that, you probably had no control system security at all in that degree. I was similar. But I did get an internship with EnergySec. It's a nonprofit that's focused on cybersecurity for the electric sector. We took on 4 interns that first year with me. And after my internship, the boss asked me to stay on part-time, doing 20 hours a week. So I stayed on doing that. And then after graduation in May, June, whatever, he's like, hey, we want to hire you full-time, but we want to make sure we have the money to do it first. So so it'll probably be like a month or 2. So I half-heartedly looked for jobs, but not really because I knew that I probably had a job waiting for me. And I went full-time in August that year with EnergySec. Now the great thing about that is I went full-time, but I didn't get new projects. They just want to keep you on. So I went full-time, and also I went from 20 hours to 40 hours a week. So I had a lot of time on my hand. I used that time to find network forensic puzzles, like DEF CON does their network forensics challenge, and so I would find an old one of those, try to do it. If I got stuck, then go find somebody who had done a write-up of it and walk through what they did. It was probably about 3 to 6 months where until I started taking on more projects, and I wasn't able to do that kind of thing as often anymore. But it was a lot of fun. I was able to go find things to do and find things to learn about. And one of the things that I had to learn about was control system security. So now some of the things that I learned about control system security is going to be a very brief, high-level overview of how ICS security works and how it's different from IT security. First off, everybody's probably heard of the CIA triad, or triangle, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. In IT, it probably looks something like this. Confidentiality is most important, integrity is next, and availability is third. If you want to question that, I would say ask the Sony execs if they would trade a week of no email for having the confidentiality of their emails. I mean, in IT, confidentiality is probably the most important. In ICS, it's different. Availability is the most important. Integrity is next, and confidentiality is third. Now, the laws of triangles, I was also a math teacher. The laws of triangles, you can only make that small side so small without having a triangle. It actually looks probably something like this, where confidentiality is really tiny, integrity is a little bit, and then availability is the biggest thing. So that the baseline of where the priorities are is probably the biggest thing where it's different than IT security. Another way it's different is product lifespans. This comes from Checkpoint. This is their support time frame. A new product becomes available. They start a clock. You have 5 years of product support on the previous product. Most companies, if they refresh the product line every 2 or 3 years, that's 7 or 8 years of lifetime. And most companies probably do less than that. When I was a teacher, a lot of schools have a 3-year product lifetime because kids are so hard on their hardware. IT is different. IT measures their product lifespan in decades. There was a study a few years ago by the Department of Energy. The average large power transformer in the U.S. was 40 years old. The reason why they're that old is because they cost $1 million or more per item. One of the reasons they cost so much is because the lead time to make them is so long, a year or more. One of the reasons the lead time to make them is so long is because the average large power transformer design was made 1.3 times. So everything is made to spec. 1.3 times means that for every 3 designs, one of them is to spec, 2 of them is to spec, and the third one is made twice. Everything is from the ground up when you're designing those. And if you're spending $2, $3, $4 million on one of those, you cannot recoup your investment in 5 years or even 10 years. You're on a 30, 40, 50-year life cycle on that thing.
One more time, OT stands for what?
I'm sorry. Occupational technology. Operational technology. I thought I mentioned that earlier. So we have that timeline. That timeline is a huge difference. Another way it's different is in OT, in operations technology. There's a phrase called insecure by design. This is, I don't know if it was coined by Dale Peterson, the guy I mentioned earlier, but he probably uses it the most. What that means is that the protocols and the way they're designed are insecure just from the start. If you have access, you have control of the system. This is a quote. This is from last May. This guy wrote an article and he said, if you know anything about, if you're new to Modbus or you're new to security, you know everything there is to know about Modbus security. Because there's nothing. Everything is clear text. That's what he's talking about when he says, when we say insecure by design, is that everything is clear text. There's no authentication. This is slowly changing. One of the protocols I mentioned was DMP4. There's something called DMP3 Secure Authentication now, which is a fully compliant DMP3, which has authentication built in from the ground up. Because things are so slow moving in the ICS world, it takes time for that kind of thing to propagate, though. So, another thing that I've learned is that some engineers don't like security people. And by star engineers here, I mean chemical engineers or civil engineers, electrical engineers. Some of them don't like. I had hate on this slide to start with, but I decided to tone it down a little bit. Now, why don't they? This is the first reason. You remember this? They don't think we understand their concerns. They care so much about availability, they don't think we understand that. To go along with that, they think we're going to break their processes. And when 99% of what you care about is availability, if your process gets broken, then you're on a really bad day. This is from a users group for a manufacturer product that I was at doing a compliance talk a few months ago. And one of the people from a utility at this place said this manufacturer was coming out with an industrial firewall sold through their OT division. And they're like, we're really excited about this because we don't want IT people touching our stuff, even to the point that they don't want the IT people touching the firewall that goes into the plant. And the main thing is they go back to they think we're going to break their processes. They don't think we understand their concerns. Another reason is the good old fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Nobody in here uses this to sell projects, I'm sure, but some people do. There was an example of this just a couple months ago at the 33rd Chaos Communication Congress in Germany. There was a talk there by a hacker, security researcher, whichever term you prefer, about smart power meters, and the talk was really bad. He used FUD to sell things. He put a picture up like this. It's the exact same one because when I went to go find his talk to get a screenshot from it, it was taken down from YouTube. But he had a picture of a smart meter that had caught fire, and he said in his talk that hackers could hack into a smart meter, cause it to catch on fire, and cause a house to burn down type thing. One of the audience members at the talk at the end in the Q&A said, you seem to be oversimplifying and exaggerating the scenario. And he said, I did that on purpose because I want to get through to the non-cybersecurity people. That's just a bad game plan. You lose. If you go to an electrical engineer who understands that a hacker cannot go on and physically change the wiring in a smart meter and cause it to short out and catch on fire, the electrical engineer is going to lose all respect for you if you try to tell him that's going to happen. The last one, we aren't engineers, but some of us call ourselves one. Not every real engineer thinks this way, but there's some who do. To be a professional engineer, you need to go get a 4-year degree, and then you have to take a 5-hour, 20-minute test after your college degree. That lets you go get a job underneath a professional engineer. And then after 4 years of working under a professional engineer, you get to go take an 8-hour test that you have to pass, and then you can call yourself an engineer. When you think about that background, you can understand why they kind of take that title seriously, and they kind of look down their noses at a software engineer or a security engineer who may be talented, but they don't view it as somebody who's earned that title. And that goes, not every engineer, some of them understand it's just a job title when a software engineer says that, but some of them kind of do take that. Now, a very quick intro to ICS security. when we start talking about ICS security, I said that the protocols don't have security built in a lot of times. So we have to use security architecture to secure things. And the most common way, at least in the electric industry, is something called the Purdue model. And this uses layers. So level 0, or layer 0, is the physical process. So that's the two chemicals mixing together. That's the voltage crossing the line. That's whatever physical process you're talking about. You go up a level to level 1, and you have intelligent devices. These are the sensors and the actuators. So the valve that opens and closes, the temperature reading, the voltage reading, whatever you're measuring or controlling. Go up a level to level 2, and you have the control systems that actually do the supervising and monitoring and controlling. HMI is a human-machine interface. That's a fancy term for a computer in an OT system. And we'll see an example of that in a little bit. Go up a layer from there, and you have level 3, the operation systems. So these would be something, a common one would be something called a data historian. A data historian takes data from the HMI. The HMI sends data to the data historian every so often, every minute, every hour, depending on how often you need it. And then it collects all that data and archives it so that when an engineer needs that data, they're asking something in level 3 instead of something in level 2. So you get those security zones. Then level 4 above that is the business enterprise. Your email, your scheduling, that kind of thing. Sometimes we talk about the IT-OT divide. That would be, IT would be enterprise side stuff. That's the level 4. OT would be the level 3 and below. And then sometimes you see a level 3.5, which would just be a DMZ in between level 3 and 4. One interesting thing I just found out like a month or two ago is that nuclear actually uses the same ideas but reverses it to where the higher number is closer to the process. I found out they're the only ICS that does it backwards for some reason. So this is an example of how one might look. You have layer 2, layer 0 through 2 is down here on the bottom. You have a PLC controlling a process. And I like this one, it demonstrates what we call zones and conduits when we're talking about the Purdue model. You have the different levels or zones of security, and then you have defined conduits that go through those zones. So that if an engineer up here working in the corporate office wants to get down to the data historian in here, they have a defined process that they have to go through. You want everything documented, everything locked down as much as you can at those access points, so that because that is where the security comes from. That was weird. What happened when I was reversing too? I think I clicked on the link that was there in the top corner. You use the spacebar. This is another one. This is from a white paper that I put out a couple years ago for my real job. Same idea. You have the enterprise network. You have the zones down there. At each of those, what I like about this one is it shows that firewall at each of those connections. There's a certain defined way. If you're really doing something, you probably have standby firewall too, just for availability purposes. But the idea is that everything goes through those security checkpoints. Another ICS security thing is network security monitoring. NSM seems in a lot of ways designed for ICS security. It wasn't, but there's a lot of people working to bring it into ICS security now because it is tailor-made for it. When you have a control system, you know what traffic you should be getting. You know what normal operations look like. And so you know that red apple, when you see it, is wrong, if you're looking. If you're not looking, then you don't know that that red apple showed up in the bin. But if you're looking at things and monitoring it appropriately or adequately or at all, I don't want to be too harsh on people who aren't, but if you're monitoring it, then you can see those things a lot easier than an IT network, where IT, there's a lot of stuff that goes on that you don't necessarily. My boss doesn't know what website I'm going to go to any given day, so he can't just monitor for weird websites. Related to that is application whitelisting. Since you know what is good, you can only allow what is good also. Now, this one can be more difficult because again, if you get application whitelisting wrong, by definition, you're going to affect availability. So it can be more difficult, but it's another thing. It's always, every time the ICS cert puts out a paper about anything, they say, do application whitelisting. Because if done effectively, it can be very good at preventing bad things from happening. Alright, so how do you get involved in ICS security? You're like, okay, this is interesting, I want to learn more. So this is kind of some things that I've done, especially that first time at my job where I was going and learning about control system security from the ground up. This first one comes from a guy named Chris Sistrunk. Chris talks at DEF CON Black Hat. He's at that level. Much smarter than me, much more experienced than me. He says donuts. If you work at some place where you have an ICS department, develop relationships with them. And he says when you're trying to develop relationships with them, bring them donuts. Bring coffee and donuts to a lunch meet and greet. Have a breakfast session where you talk to them and draw their get a chance to talk to them, hear their concerns, hear what they're trying to do, hear how you can help solve their problems. If you don't work at an ICS business already, there's other things you can do though. The good news is that a lot of the tools you already have work. Wireshark supports ICS protocols. This one, can't see it from where you guys are sitting probably, but that's a Modbus TCP collected over Wireshark. You can use Wireshark to monitor what you have. You can use Wireshark to set up labs, and we'll see a little bit later. A lot of that setting up the lab stuff is already done for you for free. Another thing you can do is visit Shodan, shodan.io. It is a website. It calls it the search engine for everything that's not on Google. And this power plants word cycles through and says like video cameras and car. I don't know if cars is on it, but power plants, baby monitors, anything like that. The guy John Mather, something like that, who runs it, is big on education too. There's actually tutorials on Shodan, very high level, kind of skim the surface tutorials, but they're there. You can click on, I want to learn about ICS, and it'll take you to this page. And then you can click on, it said, one there says, explore Xerxes wind turbine. And it will actually put in a web search for you. You have to have a login, but it's free to do this. And I did one, they had one Explore DMP3. So it put in port 20,000, the default DMP3 port, and it did a search for me to find DMP3 servers in worldwide. I clicked on the first one, and it shows me it's in Kansas. If you go down, their interface, they have port 43 on top, but if you keep going down, then it has it grabs the banner of each port that's open, and this one wasn't exciting. It just said something about need to authenticate or something like that. But it pulls that stuff in for you. You don't even have to know what ports you're looking for. You can go start exploring on Show Day. You can use free training. I love learning. I love free trainings. ICS Cert, our tax money pays for a lot of really good training from ICS Cert. They have free online training. It's okay. You'll get an intro. They have like intro to ICS security, and it's like a hour-long click-through thing, maybe a 2-hour-long click-through thing. They have a few different topics like operation security, OPSEC for ICS security. It's online training, so it is what it is. It's sometimes online training isn't that great. They have in-person one-day trainings, an intro level. I haven't actually done their one-day trainings, so I can't comment on how good they are, but they offer those. And then they have 5-day red team, blue team training in Idaho Falls, Idaho. And if you work in somewhere that has a control system, or you work in security and you want to get involved in control system, you want to try to go to this course. It is by far the best free training you can get. They start day 1 through 3. They have like an intro to hacking, where they give you Kali Linux. And if you're involved in IT security, everything will be reviewed. But then they have intro to operational technology topics, and then they have intro to network security monitoring, and kind of an intro to all these topics. And then the highlight is day 4. You do a full 8-hour-long red team, blue team exercise, where they have a chemical mixing facility. The chemical happens to be water, but you have to mix these things. If we're back to our levels, when we mix the 2 into the 1, that's level 0, the process. You have valves on the tanks that you open and close to mix things. That's level 1, the sensors and actuators. Here's a fuzzy picture of the HMI that's in their control room. You start and stop the process on there. This is you do this live. The blue team has to keep mixing chemicals all day long. Every batch they make, they get points on the exercise. Then they have their all the way up to enterprise. They have emails going back and forth across this network. They have a CEO emailing, giving instructions. They have management coming in. They have a manager's room for the blue team, and you'll get calls from the upper management, which are the ICS cert people. They're the upper management in the scenario, and they'll tell you, "Hey, we need to do this." A funny example was an oil rig worker. They're a little uncouth, if you know me. Sometimes. He drew a nasty picture and put it up to the security camera, and they called down and said, "You have to do sensitivity training with the operations, with the OT group." And so they had to stand around and do sensitivity training for 5 minutes or something. But everything is there. You got an entire business running in this place. Phenomenal exercise. And there was people there. One guy was was an operations manager, knew nothing about IT. They had another guy who was a Marine Corps red team pen tester. Just a wide range of people. So everybody can fit in and find something to do there and find something to learn there. It's the best training I've ever had, and it's free. I mean, it's phenomenal. Well, free as in we already paid for it with our taxes. ICS Cert also runs the ICS Joint Working Group. These are quarterly meetings. They usually have 2 or 3 tracks. Some are hands-on workshops. Some are more management type stuff. My boss is, I think, talking the next one on workforce development. So not all of it is ICS security, but all of it is ICS focused. We run workforce development programs, so for ICS security. So that's why it would be appropriate there. But they're free and they travel all over the U.S. I think the next one is in Minnesota in a couple months. I don't know if it was last one. The one before was in Arizona. So they just kind of pick different places around the country and hold the ICS JWG. Another place you can learn is YouTube. This screen capture is from a guy named Rusty Williams, who is a longtime Georgia Power employee. He's pretty good. Like anything on YouTube, you have to pay attention to and do some research. I saw another talk that was supposed to be educational, and it said that SCADA was a requirement and had it listed on a slide with FSMA and HIPAA. And in the comments, somebody called them out and said, "I don't think SCADA is a requirement." And the person doubled down on it and said it is. So I would not recommend that video. But you have to do your research, and if you find somebody who knows what they're talking about, it can be valid. These are two of my favorite. ICS capture the flags. There's not a whole lot of them. Every once in a while you see one at a conference or something. The SANS ICS Cybersecurity Challenge is put on by SANS, obviously. It's run by a guy named Robert Lee, the guy who wrote SCADA and Me, the kids' book. It is supposed to go live this month, he told me. It was supposed to go live, I guess it's delayed this year, because he's been moving. But it's gonna go live, that first one, sometime in the next few weeks, hopefully. The Saibadi Black Box Challenge is another one. I'll kind of talk about both, the general idea of them. Every ICS capture the flag I've seen kind of follows the same pattern. They start out really basic because there's going to be some people who have never touched an ICS network. So I can't remember which one of these, but one of the first questions was list 10 ICS protocols. So really basic. So if you know nothing about ICS, you can go start learning something from these. All the way to find in this memory capture, find the malware and identify it. And it was this was actually the SANS one, the SANS ICS challenge. It was to find black energy was in this malware or in this memory sample, memory dump, and the challenge came out, and then Ukraine happened, which used black energy too, like a month later. So Robert's like, "Hey, I hit that perfect." And they do, obviously SANS does other trainings too. Saibadi I want to talk a little bit more about because they have a lot of really good free stuff. They have some stuff that's not free. I'll point that out when we get to it. The guy, Matt Llewellyn, is the guy who created Saibadi, and he does ICS training. He took ICS protocols, ICS networks, and he virtualized them basically to point and click. You hit a setup wizard, and you tell it what protocol you want to use, and it has 4 or 5 protocols. I did Modbus on this one. You can see Modbus up on the top. I said set up a Modbus network, and it set up a Modbus network for me. I could have said Ethernet over IP or whatever I wanted. And there's this ICS network with traffic going. You hit another wizard, and you can start a bottle filling plan. So I'm filling a bottle. I assume I think it's water or balls or whatever. But I'm filling soda bottles with that blue water, and with a very simple HMI that says run or stop. But I can run it, I can stop it, and this one, if it hits the fill line, it stops, and then it moves to the next space, and there's what goes on a motorized track, imaginary motorized track. And then you can do another wizard, and you can tell it, I want to attack my process. So I did a stop and fill attack on this one, and it stopped the motor and just started filling, which should not happen. You can make the motor just never stop. So just keeps running and no bottles get filled, and whatever it is. And then you can take that, and it's doing a packet capture, and you can go look in the packet capture. And this was the black box CTF involved. Look in the packet capture and finding the attack in the packet capture, so that you get some experience looking at those PCAPs and finding attacks. This is the part that's not free. He sells what he calls his mini kits. My office has this one. It's the old version. Now he's simplified it a lot with the Raspberry Pi there. And it's a traffic light system. You can make a traffic light, attack the traffic light. You get one of those free if you take his paid training, or you can buy the mini kit and just explore yourself. But a really, really good teacher, really good resource. And the VM is something like 28 gigabytes last I saw. That's free though, and so you can run that VM, run that network, run everything virtualized, all for free in a VMware image. You guys are lucky in Florida. 2 of the top ICS conferences are local to you guys. It's not considered local. I live in Portland, Oregon. So SANS comes to Orlando in March, and it is like every SANS training. They're really good, but they're really expensive. So if your company can pay for you, then you might want to do it. If they can't, then you probably don't. S4 is one that's started by Dale Peterson of Digital Bond. He says, what he likes to say is that there's no SCADA 101 at S4. It's high-level technical stuff, and he's actually branched out now to high-level policy stuff, too. And by high-level, I mean like General Michael Hayden, that kind of thing. Stuff. The next one will be next January. That one's really fun. It's at the Jackie Gleason Theater in Miami, and they have poolside cabanas. Have you been to S4?
Jackie Gleason now.
They have poolside cabanas and everything. It's really good. For ICS, I don't know as much about. It's in Europe. If you happen to visit Europe, it has a lot of really good comments. People I know who have been to it really, really like it. This is second to last slide. Some people, when I came into this industry as kind of a new 3 years ago maybe, and it's amazing how welcoming people have been. Like Chris Sistrunk is somebody who talks at DEF CON every year, talks at Black Hat almost every year, that kind of thing, and he'll answer my questions. Somebody like Robert Lee is the same. I found out just like 6 months ago that there's 2 Robert Lees at SANS, and so that's why he has the N in there. But I've texted him even outside of security, just texted him questions because he has an intelligence background, and he's answered them and stuff. Marina Kronofil was involved in incident response to the most recent Ukraine hack. She's new to ICS world, but relatively new to the ICS world, but has a security background and made that transition to ICS. Jack Whitsitt is a coworker, super brilliant, and then Michael Tucker has a nuclear engineering background. And there's more. It's a small world, and in a lot of I was talking to somebody last night, and they were like, it seems like a closed world, and in a lot of ways it is a closed world, but if you reach out, people will respond and answer. I had somebody I know from Portland who is a really good, really smart hardware hacking guy, but was not on ICS security, and I gave him a couple names, and he came back 2 months later and he said, thanks for those contacts because it's been phenomenal, and people are willing to help out. If you show an interest in ICS security, they will be willing to help out. This last one is the last one because I was going to cut it if I was way up against time. This is most of you look like you're too old for this one. This is Interrupt. It is run by Mark Blackmer from Cisco. It's ICS focused, capture the flag, although we call it treasure hunt, for 14 to 22-year-olds. This one was in Portland, Oregon. My company helped run this. I like this picture because my kid's in the background of that one. But we have a traffic light, we have a water system, and the kids are getting on and looking for the attacker on this treasure hunt. They have to find the guy who took out the traffic lights on the system. Kind of building that, getting people introduced to security and ICS security especially from there. It's a nonprofit. If you're interested, it's interrupt.org with a 1. If you're interested in ICS security, it's a great program to become a part of. And that's it. I have my name, and I'm on Twitter quite a bit. You see me. One of my jobs is to write a weekly newsletter, and so I tweet out a ton of security articles for my job, and so and then I tweet out a bunch of politics articles. Recently, I've been pushed over the edge a couple times. My wife tells me to tone it down. I can show you the slide I cut if you want on that. But are there any questions? Yeah.
What does the slug taste like?
What does the slug taste like?
Yeah.
It did not. I've mentioned that twice now in one of these talks, and that was the question both times. It just tasted. It was like it didn't really have a taste. I mean, it was. I literally touched it for a second. It was like smooth.
I don't think I've ever tried it, so I thought I'd ask you.
Yeah, you probably don't want to. Any other questions or anything? All right. We're only like 2 minutes over then, so that's not too bad.